Right on time there. How's it going there, Adam?
Yeah, Darren, good, mate. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much. Well, I could be much better. Had I taken one above last night, it may have been a better day for me, but hopefully you didn't make that mistake.
No, I don't know. Absolutely not. I'm one above every day, one above the rest, as they say. But it's definitely it's a solid product, that's for sure. I've noticed actually a big difference while traveling, that's for sure. And so it certainly helps the Sunday mornings when you've had a few beers the night before.
The Sunday mornings, the Monday mornings, the Tuesday mornings. I mean, all the mornings. That's the key. But I appreciate you taking the time. So many things that I want to ask you because your story intrigues me. It's not just, hey, this guy is a legend in his sport. It's also that you took a big risk in coming to the States. Like most people would have just stayed in their comfort zone and that's it. And they're going to retire there. Was it a big decision for you to say,
Yeah.
hey, maybe I'll take this LA offer?
Yeah, it was. I think initially it was because after the 2019 World Cup, I got back to Australia and I actually started having conversations with people outside of rugby in terms of what I could potentially be doing next, is in chapter 2, entering the real world, so to speak, and finding a real job. So I'd engaged in a few discussions and started making progress in that area. But it was a call from Adam Gilchrist, the owner of F45 and the owner of the LA Giltinis and Gil Groenies, at the start of 2020 that convinced me that retiring wasn't really an option, and he convinced me to come over and play in the MLR. And I think at the time it was I was racking my brain to think that how could you be playing rugby in the States? But now that I'm here, I mean, it's easy to see that the game's rapidly growing. There's a lot of talent here, and it's really, really enjoyable, and it's a great competition and a great league. So really happy I certainly made that decision. And I knew if I did make that decision, I'd regret it.
Had you been to Los Angeles much before signing this deal?
I would say twice. I'd probably spent a total of 2 weeks in LA in a lifetime. So now that I'm here and I'm settled, I'm really, really enjoying my time here.
I'd have to imagine it's a deal like when David Beckham, star, and then he takes the deal in LA, and you go, well, it could have been a lot worse if he signed up with, say, Cincinnati, like just some small city where there's no presence for the sport. So in your case, luckily you wound up in a city where there are people from Australia, there are people who are rugby fans, and I'd have to imagine your situation. You really have to keep your ego in check because everywhere you go, people are either diehards of rugby or they've never seen rugby once. So it's either
Absolutely
first class or less than coach everywhere.
Paddle. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you've got supporters here that absolutely know the game, but the majority of punters here in the US have got no idea. But the positive note on that is that the Americans that have come to attend games so far absolutely love the game. They see a game of 80 minutes, 15 on 15, a violent game with guys just bashing each other without any protective equipment, and it's really enjoyable for them. It's a high-tempo game, and it's just action the whole time. So you can see why they love it. So I'm hoping that the game grows on the US spectator here, and then, in years to come, we're filling out some of the best stadiums in the world over here in the States. But yeah, it's a funny one. I think the move to LA has certainly helped that transition because, as you know, LA is a bit of a sporting capital of the world. We've got the Lakers, we've got the Clippers, we've got the Dodgers, Chargers, right? There's so many major league teams here that you can support and get around and really soak up that sporting atmosphere. I mean, at the moment, we've just entered the first professional rugby team here in LA, and mind you, it's been challenging, but I think it's great for our game because globally rugby's very popular, and that's the beauty of our sport, is that you can take your craft around the world. I grew up and played in Australia, and then I went to France, did some time over there in Europe. I came back via Japan, back to Oz, and now I'm here in the States, which I never thought was a possibility. But here I am. I'm kind of still pinching myself that I'm here in the States playing rugby. So it's particularly at 37. So, mate, it's the whole package.
Are there things that were especially hard to get used to living in LA compared to where you were? I think I know the answer to this. As a New Yorker who's spent a lot of time in LA, things are very different. Like, for example, have you spent a lot of time in New York?
We were there last weekend, and we only had 3 days, and it was a short trip. I mean, and it was based around preparing for a game. So I mean, we couldn't really get out too much. I mean, we went for a small walk and a coffee, and I got to see a few things because we stayed in the Lower East End of Manhattan. And New York, geez, wow, what a city. That place is huge. I've never been there before. So that bus ride in from JFK to the hotel, I was just like in awe. It was one of the best bus trips I've ever been on. And I've been on a few in terms of bus trips to hotels and stadiums, but that was really cool. But I can understand that. I understand that New Yorkers see the huge difference from there to here, East Coast and West Coast. I think for me, it hasn't been too challenging in terms of lifestyle because Australia, we have a similar coastline. Where I grew up in Sydney's on the east, but I mean, I've got a lot of family in Perth that's on the west coast. But I think because it's quite coastal and quite laid back and pretty chilled, I'm kind of used to that, and I'm comfortable with that kind of lifestyle. I think the only difference is for me here is that I'm getting the sunsets rather than the sunrise when I'm in the East Coast in Sydney. So that's Californian sunsets. I haven't really seen it rain here yet, so that's a positive. But apart from that, mate, it's been pretty smooth.
And I have to add that when you were in New York for the game, a lot of it was actually New Jersey. Most people don't realize that some of the New York sports teams, like the Red Bulls and MLS, the Giants and the Jets, actually play in New Jersey. And not the nicest parts of New Jersey, we have to say. Whereas in LA, things are more relaxed. And you make a very good point that a lot of people don't realize, who are ignorant, that Australia is beachy, is laid back in certain parts, and then it's very city oriented and deadline oriented like New York and other parts.
Correct.
So what I'm getting at is, when you moved here, was it a struggle to, I like this kind of food. Where can I find it? Oh, you can't find it? Oh, I'm going to plug this in. Oh, the power converter. Did you have a lot of those?
Well, it's a really good question. I think the biggest challenge for me wasn't actually settling in here and getting used to and embracing the different culture. It was more about getting here. I mean, the Australian government made it almost impossible for us to leave Australia and get here. I'm talking the visa process took around 12 months. And I had to get travel exemptions. I had to fill in all these DS-160 forms for myself, my wife, and my son. I mean, just a lot of admin, a lot of niggle. We got knocked back a lot. So it seemed like it was almost impossible to get in. Now that I'm here and I'm just kind of really soaking it up, that's just kind of like now a distant memory. But I remember that being a huge challenge at the time. Coming here, I was certainly ready. I had an expectation that it would be challenging because I've had that experience of moving countries before. Mm-hmm. Sydney to Bordeaux in France. I mean, obviously moving to France, that's always going to be a cultural shock. And obviously the language barrier made it challenging. From France to Japan, again, it's almost like going backwards in time, totally flipping the script, another completely different cultural shock, which I really love. So, I mean, in a way, we've kind of almost prepped ourselves. So once we got here, it kind of was a bit of a walk in the park in terms of transitioning and embracing cultural change because we've done it a lot before. And what's made it really easy is that we all speak English. So, I mean, that's something that we really didn't have to test ourselves on too much. So, but what I really am enjoying is just how Americans live. Everything is bigger, everything is better, everything is loud, everything is awesome and positive. And I mean, I've only signed a 1-year deal, but I'm already thinking about how long I can stay. It's just, I'm really, really enjoying it. I just love the vibe here. I don't know if it's just a Californian thing, but we've already been down to New Orleans, we've been to Houston, we've been down to Austin, we've been to New York. We've still got a lot of travel to do and to go. And I'm just loving it. I just think it's just a huge vibe over here in the States, and I'm kind of thinking, how did I get here earlier? So that's kind of gives you a bit of an indication of how much we're enjoying it.
I'd have to imagine that you're handling all this much better at age 37 than you would have at 22.
Oh, absolutely.
you might have been making poorer decisions back then. But
that's correct. Absolutely.
It's wonderful to see how you had such a long-term career. And in terms of not being injured this far in your career, do you have to do a lot of prep, or are you just kind of genetically lucky?
Well, I'll put it down to a couple of things. I touch a lot of wood, so I'm a bit superstitious. So, I mean, I feel like I've just been very lucky. Contact sports is just, it's one of those things where you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's completely not your fault, and suffer a long-term or a career-ending injury. For me, I think I've just been really lucky. And then on top of that, I mean, being 37, you kind of have to prep pretty well. So these days, and in particular, the last couple of years, I've been warming up for the warm-up. So a lot of the young guys, you just kind of come in, they can just get going at the drop of a hat, where the old bulls like myself have to get in there nice and early and starting to get the blood flowing, get the body moving, and get going from there. But no, it's been all right.
That's good to hear, because not many people are still a professional athlete in their late 30s in this day and age, let alone 20 years ago. We used to see the occasional Major League Baseball pitcher make it to their early 40s. But in football, no, the NBA, occasionally you get an early to mid 40s player. But it's interesting to hear that before, or in the conversation, you were talking about, hey, what am I going to do next in life? Could you give me a hint as to what one or two of those careers might have been?
You know what? It's an interesting question. It's a question that I've asked myself. Other people have asked me for years, and I still really can't answer that. And I think I put that down to that I'm just that kind of guy that crosses that bridge when it comes. I'm only obsessed with what I'm doing now, and obviously rugby for me. I think it's also the fact that I can't do two things at once. I think rugby for me has been my only priority, and I've just put all my focus and energy into what I'm doing now, and that's been football for my career. The conversations that I was having when I was considering retirement, and let's just touch on, I said that retirement's a little bit like leaving the pub. You always stay for one more. Yeah. So, I mean, I had to battle with that. So when I was discussing about leaving the pub, I was having conversations with some friends in finance and wealth management, but that wasn't something particularly that I wanted to do. I've got interest in, finance, wealth management, maybe some private equity, property development, all these little things that maybe I kind of want to dive into, because I've been playing rugby since I was the age of 5, and I'm 37 now. So I've obviously obtained this unique life skill, but I'm really keen to learn something completely different, because all I know is rugby. It's all I know. Talk, breathe, live, sweat, bleed rugby. That's my life. So I would love to upskill and learn something in a totally different field or industry that may help me further on down the track. I find that interesting and exciting. But then again, there's another conversation that I have with myself about, you have been doing it for such an early age. Why waste that life skill that you've had? It's you've got a lot of experience and you've got so much to share and give back. So I'm kind of in this, I'm torn. It's a bit of a pickle for me at the moment, but I think what's helping is just that I'm here in the States. There are different opportunities in and around the game. I'm experiencing, I'm making new friendships, new relationships, creating new memories. So I'm hoping that the States offer some type of direction for me post-football. And we'll just have to wait and see.
That's a totally different answer than what I was expecting, because this is going to be a compliment here. You are so good at social media and interviews. Like, you're being so nice and relaxed right now, but you can really hype it up when the cameras come on, and then you can tweet about it in a really great way. Now, your Twitter and your Instagram are very different, because Instagram, you let people into your home life and the relaxed life, whereas the Twitter is more the locker room you. So I would have thought that it would be, well, I want to be a brand ambassador, and that's what I want to do, and bring people to rugby, but at the same time, help people sell their products. That's what I thought the answer was going to be.
You're right. Well, I think that's a really interesting interpretation, and I appreciate your feedback. I mean, I've really got no idea how Twitter and Instagram oppose each other. I like to think that I kind of just use those platforms for a bit of fun. I allow the puncher in terms of sharing some insight, but really I love creating memories. And I think for me, Instagram in particular is something that you can capture those memories and log and store them, so you can look back on in years to come and say, hey, that's me on a Super 73 electric bike cruising the Strand down Manhattan Beach. I remember those days. They were awesome. I mean, yeah, you're right. I do use Instagram, and like every other influencer in the world, I'm not an influencer. I'm a rugby player, so I don't really have my head around it all that much. But it is a great opportunity to capture photos and memories, but also help your friends and family out that are trying to do well in the world in terms of business and career and pursuing their ambitions. So I mean, I like to be supportive and positive in that regard, and I think Twitter is just always, for me, a little bit of back and forth banter with my mates. So it's good to engage in that stuff, but for me, that's really not a priority. I don't think I see myself post-career entering influencer life, so to speak. But hey, if there's a camera in front of me, I'll perform.
And something I couldn't figure out about you, I saw an interview you did where they were asking who has the best playlists in the locker room, who has the worst playlist. And you said the person who had the worst playlist was listening to a lot of Katy Perry, and the person who had the best playlist was listening to more beachy vibes, Australian kind of music. But I couldn't figure out what music you actually do listen to. Could you tell me who some of your favorites are? And it's okay if they're totally obscure and Australian from an Australian family that lives here in my town. They've taught me about Grin Spoon, and I know about Triple J, so you can go obscure on me.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, that's a tough one to answer because I'm that guy, right, who just jumps around all the time. I don't have a particular genre that I love. I just kind of love the best of the best. And I'm the guy who walks around at a barbecue or even a nightclub or a Sunday session where if I hear a good song, I Shazam it and then go straight into that monthly playlist. So kind of like just waiting to hear, excuse me, what I enjoy. And then I kind of just capture that. I'll put it in my playlist. I'll flog it for the month and then I'll move on. But at the moment, but the thing is also being a rugby player, you listen to so many different types of genres is because when you're in the gym, everyone's playing some really upbeat, big hype, big vibe kind of tune, big beats, which I love. And then we also love bringing it down when we can because you can't be up here the whole time. When we're just cruising on a Sunday afternoon at a nice long lunch or down the beach, I like to bring it back a little bit. So, I mean, I'll listen to anything. I've got absolutely no issue or problem with what's being played. It's just got to be a good beat, you got to feel it.
I didn't know if I was going to find out that you're secretly a metal guy.
I think it has its place. I mean, I wouldn't write it off. But that's not something I'm listening to right now, that's for sure.
So if I can break down what I've learned, it's that you're glad to be here in the States. You hope that it can continue. Family life is good. Post-rugby life, when it happens, you're ready for it. You're curious to see what's out there, and things are good.
Life's good, mate. That's good. I think you nailed it. Absolutely right. I'm really enjoying my time here. My wife and my son are really enjoying it. I'm loving playing football. I'm enjoying kind of sharing my experiences, contributing at the club. I'm really excited about what's next, but I don't know what that is. But I'm just happy with being present and taking it a day at a time, a step at a time.
Got it. Well, my last on the record question for you is Adam, any last words for the kids?
Play rugby.
And drink one above if you are of the age where you should be doing it.
I mean, how could I forget? One above has certainly got. I mean, I'm 37. I'm still playing rugby. I'm still putting myself back on the field, and there's only one reason for that, and that's one above.
Paltrocast.